Hey out there, everybody on the internet. We are back right here on Different Strings, a guitar podcast with another episode of Music That Matters. But before we get into that, and this is going to be a doozy, I hope you're comfortable because this is going to be a doozy.
Get ready. Your
There's
ear holes are going to be pleased with. Never mind.
There's a lot of love coming here.
Yeah.
But before we do any of that, Andy, as always, is going to tell us tell you where to find us on the internet so that we can join together in the conversation.
Be very, very quiet. Go to differentstwingspodcast.com.
That's pretty good. I was giving him a hard time for those of you that aren't in on that joke about his hat earlier, and I apologize for that because it does kind of remind me of Elmer Fudd's hunting hat.
Sorry, it's all good.
But I like it. I'm a big fan of the plaid.
Yeah, me too. I got a bunch of plaid in the house somewhere, you know, from my hunting days.
It's the only thing we hunt is tone.
Oh, well done. So, Wes, I believe we kicked it to you this week for Music That Matters, and
yes, and I picked a banger.
Oh no, are you going to tell me that every song slaps?
I am not, because I am of the opinion that there are a couple songs on this album that do not actually, in fact, slap.
Holy Toledo. All right, Wes,
they're still pretty good. All right.
I want to know what we're picking this week.
We are getting into Iron Maiden's Powerslave.
Ooh.
Right? Now, you're probably going to find this hard to believe, but Powerslave is only Iron Maiden's 5th album.
I find it more hard to believe that this sucker came out in 1984.
84, baby.
It's just, that is unfathomable.
Yeah. And it's amazing how different from their first album it sounds. But between that first album, their eponymous debut, and this album, Powerslave, Maiden swapped singers, swapped drummers, swapped guitar players twice.
Yep.
Before they settled on the classic lineup of founder Steve Harris on bass, the only guy who has always been in the band.
Wow, that is crazy now that you think. Yeah, now that you mention it, that is right.
Dave Murray, who joined the band very early in its run on lead guitar, and he was out for a little while and then back in. Bruce Dickinson on lead vocals, who joined on the album previous to this. Nico McBrain on drums, who once again joined on the album previous. Dickinson was 2 albums previous. Dickinson was on Number of the Beast. Nico was on Peace of Mind.
Yep.
And Adrian Smith on lead guitar. He joined, I forget if he joined for Killers or after Killers. But think about this. Think about Iron Maiden's early output. Until Powerslave, they hadn't put out 2 albums in a row with the same lineup. And then this is, yeah, they at least changed at least one person every album until Powerslave.
That's right.
And this is the roster that lasted through what I call their golden age, which is the 4 albums from Peace of Mind, Powerslave, Somewhere in Time, Seventh Son.
Yeah.
100% agree. Number of the Beast is also a fantastic album, but that did not have the classic lineup. That had Clive Burr, rest in peace, in the band. Great drummer. Was unable to continue playing. Now, Powerslave is my number 1 favorite Iron Maiden album. I also happen to think it's their best album, but I'm also going to go on record and say almost every time I listen to this album, I skip the opening track, which is Aces High, and I go right to 2 Minutes to Midnight. And it's not so much that I don't like the song, even though I don't. Part of it is that I really just want to hurry up and get to 2 Minutes to Midnight. But I don't like that nee. I don't like Bruce singing with the same intervals as the guitar. It drives me crazy. And as a result, I don't care for that song. Now, you know, and I know that Steve writes most of Maiden's material. On Powerslave, he wrote 4 of the songs, including the 13.5+ minute long Rhyme of the Ancient
Rhyme of the
Mariner,
Ancient Mariner.
right? Which at that point was the longest song I'd ever heard that wasn't by Pink Floyd, right? And it was the longest song that Maiden had ever written. And it stayed that way until they put out Book of Souls in 2015. And that album had 2 songs longer than Rhyme on it, neither of which, incidentally, was better than Rhyme. But that is a point for a future discussion.
I don't think I ever really appreciated that Iron Maiden, a straight up UK rock band,
Metal.
metal, put out a 14-minute, like out of left freaking
Yeah.
field, a
Yeah.
14-minute epic song.
It is.
It wasn't like something they had done before.
Yeah, and it's got like an intermission in the middle that's all dramatic. It's
Mhm.
practically a dramatic reading
Right,
of,
right. Well, it's
of
based
the,
on a poem, like an
yeah,
actual, like
by
a
Samuel
real,
Taylor Coleridge.
right, right.
Yeah. So we got 2 Minutes to Midnight, which is one of my all-time favorite metal songs, period. The other flat out amazing songs on this album are Flash of the Blade and the title track, Powerslave.
Hmm.
The Duelist is pretty good. Back in the Village is pretty good. And I really love the very last instrumental that Iron Maiden ever recorded, the amusingly titled Loss for Words,
Yeah,
right? Get it? Loss for Words.
yeah.
It was the Loss for Words is the first song I learned to play off this album. And it's still to this day a ton of fun to play the main riff, especially,
Hmm.
which is all on the A string, going up and down the A string. It's fantastic. Great song.
So I remember two things about this album from
Number
my
one.
from my childhood, because this thing came out in 84 and I was a youngster. I was 14
Yeah.
years old at the time. I know two things. Number one, I learned to play a lot of this record
Yeah.
because it was just freaking fun to play.
Yeah.
So here was a great band, and they were playing music that I could sort of play, but I learned a lot about soloing from these guys.
Yeah.
Not super duper flashy, but fun. Like just enjoyable. I don't know. There's something about this stuff that made it fun to play. And the
Yeah.
second thing I remember is I started teaching myself drums to this record.
Wow.
I tried. This was the first record I heard that I'm like, man, I wish I could play that.
Yeah.
For the first time, it made me want to play drums, and I tried to learn to play drums. It didn't last long. My mother wasn't having drums in the house, and I literally had a friend bring his drums over. Jerry brought his drums over, and she came in from work and was like, "What the flim
Shut
flam
it
is
down.
that?
Shut
Shut
it
that
down.
shit! I promise I won't play when you're home." Didn't
Yeah,
last.
you're not playing at all because the neighbors are home.
We
It's
had
not
row home.
happening.
Yeah, it was a row home. It wasn't happening. Anyway, those are the two things I remember. Other than the fact that this was one of my favorite. I mean, Peace of Mind is my favorite Iron Maiden record of all
Yes,
time,
I'll
but
allow it.
this one is it was also the concert I went to, first
But I
concert.
mean,
But this record was just so good. It was like an evolution.
yeah, it really was. And I would challenge anybody who wants to improve their guitar technique to learn how to play Flash of the Blade, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a almost a tapping riff. It's a hammer and pull
Hammer and
riff
pull, right?
with the open string, and it took me months to get that lick clean, and I was so proud of myself when I did. I still play it. That's one of the
Yeah.
things I play when I sit down to practice.
Yeah, it's fun. It is a fun. I love listening to this record. I'm so when you picked this, my favorite thing was I get to go back and listen to Power Slave again.
Yeah,
I
yeah, it's a
forgot how
great
long it
album.
was since I listened to it.
Now let's talk about their gear for a second,
Oh
right?
man, my favorite part.
Okay, so tell me what you remember about Steve Harris's gear.
P bass.
P bass, 100%.
I mean, an aggressive player. Do I remember finger style? Steve
Finger
Harris
style.
played he if you don't know why Steve Harris is considered one of the premier if you don't know why Steve Harris is considered one of the premier bass players in metal today, it's because he played these ridiculously fast riffs with his fingers.
Fingers.
No pick.
No
No
pick.
pick. That man was not a cheater.
Yeah.
Um,
And he got that sound, that super aggressive sound, with flat wound strings.
Flat wounds. Roto sound, right?
Yes. And he says that's the only strings he's ever used.
Without a pick. He must have the strongest fingers to get that tone with flat wounds.
I'm
If you don't know, kids, flat
I
wounds
am
are
not getting into a thumb war with Steve Harris. It's
no,
not happening.
flat wounds are a more mellow tone.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, when you think about it, it makes sense because I flat wounds probably don't abuse his fingers as bad.
Maybe on his left hand or right hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So
So
his he's got a, for amps, I know he used high watt 200-watt heads.
never knew that.
Yeah. And he
I would
played
have
them
said
into,
I would have said Ampegs because I
yeah.
just, you know,
Yeah. And he played them into Marshall 412s, just like
okay.
Lemmy.
Oh, yep.
He did swap out the speakers. They come usually with Celestions in them. He put full range EV speakers in them. He has been known to use an SVT. Nowadays, he uses a Trace Elliott GPX 12X or
Okay.
GP12X preamp. I don't know what he uses for a power amp, but Maiden runs an ampless stage now, so it could be anything. Once it's out front, they're just making it louder, right?
Yeah.
So let's move on to Dave.
All right. Now, Dave, all right, if I recall correctly, actually, if I recall correctly, both of those guys were Strat players, but I know Dave Murray was a Strat player. And in fact, I wanted his black Strat. I wanted his black Strat.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have a black Strat now, but it's not his black Strat, but I wanted a black Strat. And they were both Marshall guys, I know, but let's just stick with Dave right now.
yeah.
Dave was a Strat guy, am I right?
Yep,
With Floyd
yep. And
Roses?
his favorite guitar is his 1957 two-tone Sunburst Strat
Oh,
that he modded
57.
with humbuckers. Um, and I think at one point he did put full-size humbuckers in it, but which would have required removing some wood. I may be wrong on that, because he is well known to use single coil sized humbuckers, hot
Right,
rails.
right. Hot
Seymour Duncan
Rails.
hot rails are the ones he likes. Nowadays, he uses 3 custom shop Strats, and they're all configured with hot rails in the bridge and neck. And I think it's called a duck bucker or something like that. It
Hmm.
has 2 screw coils in it in the
Yeah,
middle.
yeah.
And his custom shops have Floyd Roses on them. And yeah, you're right. He's a diehard Marshall user through the years, moved from the JTMs to the JCM 800s to 900s to 2000s.
Hmm.
And now I saw a video from his guitar tech, from their guitar tech.
They're Kemper dudes.
They use Kemper on stage, but Dave never takes it off the Marshall JCM 800 profile.
I know.
He
Why
uses
bother?
he has that amp, and he uses one profile, period. Never changes it.
Yeah, I bought a $3,000 amp profiler so I can use one profile. Hey, he might be a fan of the new thing they put
Well,
out.
they did it for convenience,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know.
Well, first of all,
So
they're all going deaf, and these days you just don't. There's no point in bringing all that nonsense.
yeah, yeah. So both Dave and Steve have made in Mexico Fender signatures.
Okay.
Obviously, um, Steve's is a P bass, white, Arctic white with a mirror pick guard and a West Ham sticker on it. That's his favorite football team, which we call soccer on this side of the ocean.
Okay.
Dave Murray's signature made in Mexico Strat is a 2-tone Sunburst, and it has 3 Seymour Duncan single coil sized humbuckers and a Floyd Rose. Now let's go to the other side of the stage.
Adrian.
Adrian
Now,
Smith is
I re
also a Strat player, but
I remember seeing him with a Jackson Strat.
yeah, he's a big fan of the Super Strat. He played and has a signature Jackson Dinky.
Okay.
Um, in the 80s, he was using some pointy guitars,
Hmm.
some Ibanez's, some, I think they're called Lego or Lotto. It was a small English
Wow.
builder.
Don't remember any of that. That's cool.
Yeah, but find the 2 Minutes to Midnight video. He's using one in that,
Okay.
and some live stuff from the 80s. You can see him playing some pointy guitars. He also, the only guitar that I've seen him play regularly throughout his career in Iron Maiden, other than his Jackson Super Strat, is his 1972 Les Paul Deluxe, which is a gold top. He bought it
Ooh.
when he was 17 years old. And at one point, he took the mini humbucker out of the bridge and put in a full size humbucker.
Aw.
I know, right? But it's still got the original mini hum in the neck. And he is also, like Dave, a committed Marshall player, going through the same uh, iterations as Dave did, and now uses, from what I understand, the Kemper
Also a
setup on.
Kemper. So do
Yeah.
you have, so for this, would it be safe to assume that for this record and for, well, I'm kind of curious about Peace of Mind too, but 800s for this record?
It
84.
might have been a
84.
little. I mean, yeah, the 800s were the hot new thing, so they could have either had 50 or 100 watts. I think they would have been non-master volumes at that point. I don't think they started putting the master volumes in them till 84.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they obviously recorded the album before it came out, but they were probably also using JTMs, the stuff that came out in the 60s and 70s that was everywhere.
Can we just take a minute to appreciate the thought of Iron Maiden in the studio recording these songs with a couple Marshall JTMs and a couple 800s and some 412s? Dude, just think of what that must have sounded like.
Yeah.
Seriously, man, that just brings, I have goosebumps right now thinking about how great that must have sounded. Oh my God. That's just, to me, that's, if that is what made me want to play guitar.
Yeah, that absolutely.
Mm.
And so Iron Maiden releases Powerslave.
Oh, we didn't talk about what drums Nico used.
No,
We don't care
I don't know.
about that.
I don't know anything about drums. And we're not going to talk about Yannick either, even though he's in the band, because he didn't play on this
Yannick.
album.
Yeah, that's right.
So they released Powerslave September 1984.
Okay.
And then embarked on a tour that lasted 331 days.
Dude, I remember that. I remember that this was such a long tour.
Yeah. And the 187 shows they played, which is unbelievable.
They were crazy.
Yeah. And this was before Bruce Dickinson was a licensed commercial pilot. So they had to let somebody else fly him. But the tour resulted in a double double album called Live After Death.
Yep. Just an absolute great double live record, man.
That's the album that every song slaps, because it's at that point in their career, that is a greatest hits collection. And the hits are hits after hits.
Yeah, that's a great record. And they, and not only do I remember from seeing them, but they put this live record out before things like auto-tune and like correction. Oh, yeah. They were so great live, man. There's just no question. They were a great live band. They put on a hell of a show. You had to be there to see it. And they performed. Bruce was a great singer live. He really,
and it was a show. It wasn't just five guys standing on stage playing their songs. It was a show. It was a spectacle, right? And have you ever heard anybody who isn't Bruce Dickinson shout "Scream for Me, Long Beach"? Right? I hear that all the time, and I know that person's an Iron Maiden fan who has this album.
Right.
And before I forget,
yes, vinyl.
I
actually had this on vinyl when I was a kid. I never should have gotten rid of it, and all my vinyl, if I'm being honest. Oh, there it is. Live After Death. Yep, I had this too.
Gatefold.
Yep, there it is.
Gatefold with the big Eddie in the middle.
Yep, man, that was such a great show.
Yeah. So yeah, and Steve has gone on the record as saying that this live album has no overdubs on it. Not because they didn't want to touch it up, but because they were so busy they couldn't before the label put it out. They sent Martin Birch off to work it, because they recorded all 4 nights of their stay at Long Beach Arena. The live double album that I just showed you is one night. They put one complete show on it.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then there's a concert video, which I still have on VHS. I couldn't find it to show you, so you'd be jealous. And I can't watch it. I don't have a tape machine anymore, but
Right.
I'm hanging on to that, right?
Yeah.
That is two shows stitched together because the video went out in the recording.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, you might be wondering, after all of that, why are we actually talking about this album? Because you, like everybody, knows my favorite band is Queen. My favorite guitarist is Brian May.
Mhm.
And this is music that matters. This album, this tour, this everything matters to me. But because it's because of Iron Maiden that I grew up playing metal. It's because of Iron Maiden I gravitated to Strats and Super Strats.
Mhm.
I'm obsessed with Strats because of Dave Murray, even though I cross-pollinated from Adrian because I really only like solid color Strats. I don't like sunbursts,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And when I record, you've heard some of the stuff I've
Mhm.
recorded. I use a lot of harmonies.
Yes. Yes, you do.
Obviously influenced by Brian May, but when you listen really close, I tend to do two lines because in my mind, I'm trying to be Iron Maiden. And they do
Right.
two lines, right?
Yes, they do.
Now let's talk for a minute about Iron Maiden's work ethic.
Yeah, man. You know,
I just mentioned 331-day long
Mhm.
tour, 187 shows,
Yep.
and that was their first really, really big tour. They have never stopped touring that hard. They still tour that hard, and they're in their late 60s and early 70s at this point,
Good
and
Lord.
they still play dozens of shows every year.
Hmm.
And unlike nearly all of their peers from the time period in the 80s, they have never stopped putting out new albums. And in fact, they continue to change and grow as a band as they put their new albums out. They've released 17 studio albums, right? The most
Mhm.
recent one was Senjutsu in 2021. They've also put out 13 live albums
Wow.
and 7 compilations that you could either call best of or, alternate tracks or whatever.
Huh.
And they did all of it without the benefit of mainstream radio airplay. Nobody would play Iron Maiden on the radio. Now,
Yeah.
nowadays you might hear them on XM or whatever, but in the 80s and 90s,
No.
you never heard Iron Maiden on the radio. Period. End of story. Nobody played Iron Maiden.
Nope.
They have also survived the departure of both Bruce and Adrian.
Which
Adrian
is
Adrian left the band
crazy.
after Seventh Son because he didn't like the direction they were going.
Mhm.
And Bruce left after I think one or two more albums because he wanted to do some solo stuff.
Right.
Right. He had
Was
already done a solo album called Tattooed Millionaire.
I remember that.
And Yannick Garris was his guitar player on that album, which is why they brought Yannick into Iron Maiden. Then Bruce left Iron Maiden. They got a guy called Blaze Bailey for a couple albums. That didn't work out. But Bruce and Adrian came back.
Mhm.
So not only do they have this amazing work ethic where they tour hard, they continue to put out new albums. But here's how cool these guys are. When Adrian came back to Iron Maiden, they didn't kick Yannick out.
That's right.
Any other band, they would have said, Yannick, thanks, man. We really appreciate all the work you've done, but Adrian's back. We're a 2-guitar band. It's been nice, man. Here's your check. Peace. Instead of doing that, they're like, okay, we're a 3-guitar band now.
Yeah, they evolved.
Yeah, they just switched to having 3 guitar players. And
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen them since then. I know you have, but it works on stage. It absolutely works. On the recordings, you can't really tell, right, how many guitar players there are because it just sounds
Right.
massive. But on
Exactly.
stage, it works. So between Powerslave and Live After Death, that's the reason that I wanted to get good at guitar. Brian May inspired me to be a guitar player, but Dave and Adrian made me want to practice and get good and play in a band. And that's why Powerslave is music that matters, my friend.
And I can't think of a better way to express your appreciation for a great band and a great album by, sharing a personal story. And it seems like that they're not only a great influence from a guitar perspective, but it's like they kind of brought you into the world of metal.
Yeah, yeah. And I've seen Iron Maiden. I think the band I've seen the most is King's X. Iron Maiden is number two. And the only
Okay.
reason they're number two is because they play at, those big outdoor arenas that are just hard on my social anxieties.
Hmm.
And King's X still plays big clubs. And
Yeah.
I can go to a big club and stand in the back.
This record is it's a first of all, I'm so glad you picked this one. I'm glad we did this because it brings back incredible memories of a great time in my life when
Yeah.
guitar was very new for me, at least electric guitar. And I think you and I have similar feelings about, like, we both liked learning the songs and we both enjoyed, like, they're just, to me, this is these two Peace of Mind and this album, those two, like that 1-2 punch of these two records was, it was just so, I don't know, important in my evolution as a guitar
Yeah.
player. And it actually was, um I used to use a lot of Iron Maiden art as well, like when I was expressing myself in school and I had all like my school books covered in, like, brown paper wrap. And what I would do is I would pull out an Iron Maiden record and I would like draw what I saw on the, 'cause I love their artwork. um I like the song material. Like, I like what they used to write about. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like depressing. It
No,
wasn't
but they
like
also weren't just writing about,
girls
love
and
and
cars.
parties and
Yeah, like
yeah.
there was about war. It was visceral. Their lyrics were
Yeah.
very visceral, and their
Yeah, it was
songs.
they had songs about weird stuff too, right? They had
Mhm.
a song they had a song that was basically about the book Dune.
Oh, right.
They actually used the name Kwisatz Haderach in the lyrics, you
Yeah.
know.
And
Um
Steve writes all the lyrics, doesn't he?
I think he writes the vast majority of them. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a reader.
Yeah. And
He's a voracious reader.
I did a paper in graduate school on how you can learn history from Iron Maiden. And that was in the late 90s. That was, they've come out with some other songs since then that fit into that thing. And my professor was blown away. He said, I had no idea that this even existed.
That's a great story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got an A on that paper because it was about, the paper was about pedagogy. It was about the idea of teaching. How do you teach to reach people who are
People.
not interested in history, which was something that we were all very concerned about because, you know, you ask 10 people, did you enjoy your high school history class? And all 10 of them will go, no. When I was teaching, the comment I heard the most from students was, I had no idea history could be like this.
Mhm.
And Iron Maiden is a big reason for that because you think I didn't use Iron Maiden songs in my classes?
That's so cool. I love that, man. And I we could probably go off a little bit of like a tangent, but I think it's extremely important that people learn history.
Yeah.
I just think,
Especially the things Iron Maiden talks about.
yeah, I do. Because if you don't learn history, you're doomed to repeat it. And I think it's important that you understand where we've been, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really, so I love that your paper was about that, and I love that you use Iron Maiden as like a jumping point. That's so cool.
Yeah. And the title song from this album, Powerslave,
Hmm.
that's one of their history songs.
Okay.
That's about ancient Egypt. It's where all the iconography of the album came from.
Yep.
The pyramids and the sphinx like eddies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Nope, man. I love it. All right. That wraps up another Music That Matters with 1984's Iron Maiden Powerslave, one
yeah.
of the coolest records.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for
Hey, no
doing this.
problem. Man, this was a fun one.
Yeah, this is a good
And
one.
I hardly had to do any research for this one. You know, like when we
gimme.
did the outfield a few episodes ago, I had to look up a bunch of stuff. I didn't have to look up hardly anything for Iron Maiden.
That's kind of scary. All right. So let me give it to you. No W's. Differentstringspodcast.com is the website. Go there, engage with us. And in the comments on the YouTubes, like, subscribe, and put some comments. What's your favorite song from this album? What's your favorite Iron Maiden album, and why is it Peace of Mind? And how many times have you seen Iron Maiden live? And yeah, all that stuff. Just engage with us, please.
Yeah. And one last thing.
Yeah.
Iron Maiden always had cool opening bands.
When I saw them, it was Fastway and Coney Hatch. So,
well, the main opening band, Fastway, is a pretty cool band.
Fast Eddie Clark.
Yeah, I found out about Ghost because they opened up for Iron Maiden.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that was so cool. And I really like that band.
Now, was that before Ghost was like popular? Like, were they coming up?
They were on the way up. I'd kind of heard about them and heard some of the songs, but when I saw them and when they opened up for Iron Maiden, like the next day, I got a couple of their CDs.
Okay.
I still listen to CDs and vinyl, as you can tell. I didn't have to dig very far to get these Iron Maiden albums out. I listen to Live After Death on the regular.
Oh my God, I love that. All right, so we say peace out.
Yes, we shall. Everybody, thank you for joining us.
See you next week.
And we'll see you next time on Different Strings.
Holy.
Okay.